educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in today. I have an award-winning leader, a decorated combat veteran, and a proven business executive. He is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin, where he also served for nearly a decade in the U.S. Army, including overseas assignments in the Far East and Middle East, before embarking on a private sector career that has included operations, quality, business development, finance, and executive leadership roles. As the president and CEO of North Point Logistics, he led the company to be recognized as the fastest growing privately held global logistics firm in the country, being twice named to the Inc. 5000, as well as being named one of America's best workplaces by Inc. and named the Midwest Company of the Year and the most resilient business of the year at the 2022 Best of Business Awards. I mean, I'm telling you, like, that's a whole mouthful, right? But I thank y'all for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And as you hear, we have a very successful leader, and we're going to talk about leadership today. And hopefully you can glean from this conversation. And I bring none other to you than Clint. Clint, thanks for coming on the show.
Maurice, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
Sure, no problem. So you have a laundry list of leadership opportunities, right? But let me ask you this, though. When was your first real opportunity of leadership?
It's a great question. I think leadership is one of those really interesting topics because I think everybody's first opportunity, their first experience leading, it's early in their life. It's something that they don't expect. It's when you're a kid, I was captain of my high school swim team, and that was like the first time I had that role, right? But I think those types of experiences that we have when we're young inform the experiences we have when we have our first real business leadership role. And I think that is something that's really impactful. Leading troops in combat was one thing, but when you lead people in a private sector experience, it's just a completely different problem set, and it's a completely different situation. And I think that experience was something that has absolutely shaped the way that I've gone about my career since then. Very small leadership or different leadership experiences early in my career, and then led troops in combat and led businesses after I got out. So it's been a really interesting progression through that process.
So let me ask this then, because you stated that even though, yes, you were in combat, we understand the severity of that. Like, we're not going to downplay that at all, right? But what was similar from leading in the swim team?
Yeah.
Your group, your battalion, whatever it might have been in the service, and a Inc. 5000 organization. What might have been the one trait that you had to consistently have throughout the whole time?
Yeah. So before I went to Iraq, my commander, we were out having a drink, and some guy came in and was kind of sizing us all up. It's pretty obvious that it's a bunch of military guys, right?
Right.
We all have the same haircut, right? It's pretty apparent. And it's not a good haircut. Let's be really clear about that. Right. It's not the one that anybody goes into the barber and asks for.
Right.
But my boss asked me, he said, "Do you know what he's doing?" And I said, he's asking the question of, can he take us, right? And kind of sizing us up. And he said, "No, that's not what he's doing." He said, "He's asking himself, can he do it? He's asking himself, can he do the thing that we do?" And he said, "For the rest of your life, you're never going to have to ask that question because you're always going to know the answer." And I said, "Man, thanks. That's so meaningful. Like, that's awesome." And he said, "Clint, I'm not telling you that you're going to be a leader. I'm telling you you're going to know whether you're a leader. And those are different." And he said the first time you get blown up, the first time that things go bad, the first time people get shot at, it's going to be this question of, do they look at you or do they look at somebody else? And if they look at somebody else, I have very bad news for you. It means you're not a leader. Right? If they look at you, because in that moment they're saying, who is the person I can look to who's going to get me through this next challenge? Who's the person I can look through who's going to get me through the end of the day? And so I remember, the first time that we got shot at, and I remember that experience, and I remember coming back to the outpost, and I it was intense, right? My eyes are real wide, and but I had a little bit of a grin, and he said they looked at you, didn't they? And I said, yeah, they did. And it was that moment, and I share that story because I think whether it is whether it's a team of high school athletes, whether it's a group of guys in combat, whether it's a business that's facing revenue challenges or whatever the challenge of the day is in that business, that moment that they look at you or they look at somebody else, that defines whether you're a leader, right? Whether you see a bunch of eyes or whether you see a bunch of ears because they're looking off to the side, that's what defines it. And I think the thing that defines or that dictates whether they look at you or look at somebody else is trust. It's the ability for that person to say, I don't know if this guy's got the answer, but I know he's going to figure it out. And I'm willing to place my trust in that individual. And how you create that trust, how you build that trust, how you establish that trust, it all starts and ends with authenticity. But that's the unifying thing is a level of trust between the leader and the team.
Right.
If you don't have that, you're not leading. You're just out there wandering around the woods and hopefully people follow.
So for you to just naturally have it, because you're talking about something that you've been blessed with, because someone just saw it in you. You asked the question, and he kind of like, man, I don't know why you're asking that. Like, that's the way I took that, right? So it's natural for you, but what about the individual that's not quite natural, but also not necessarily working it either? So what would you say about that person is kind of on the cusp?
Well, I think that I don't know that it's natural for anybody to be a full, I don't know if that it's fully baked out from day one, right? I think what it is it's a different level of, it's a seed, it's a kernel, and it's a question of whether you water that seed or not. And so that person who's, they're questioning whether, should I take this leadership role? Should I step into this? Should I step up in this project? When the boss raises, asks the question, if somebody needs to take charge, like, do I raise my hand? The answer that I've always given people, and I will always give people, is yes. You absolutely step up, raise your hand, run toward it. I really believe that the secret to life is to go first, be positive, and don't quit. And if you do those three things, you'll always be okay. And go first means you got to raise your hand first. You got to stick your hand out and extend for that handshake. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. If you get onto an elevator and you step onto the elevator and you smile at the person who's on the elevator, they're not always going to smile back at you.
Right.
But 95% of the time, they're going to smile back at you. And if you meet somebody and you stick your hand out, 95% of the time, they're going to shake your hand. It's not going to be 100%. Nothing in life is 100%. But if you go first and you lead that way and go first with positivity, you generally come out okay. And so the person who's asking the question of, do I step up? Hell yeah, step up, raise your hand. What's the worst thing that happens? I mean, what is the worst thing that happens in that situation? The worst thing that happens is that the project you're stepping up to lead doesn't go perfectly. And everybody who looks at it says, man, that guy who raised his hand, like, he really took charge of it. And imagine where we'd be if it wasn't for him. You become this, you start to build this aura, this reputation, this whatever of being the person who runs at problems. Who doesn't want to follow that person?
Right.
Who doesn't want to follow the person who says, here's a challenge, but get behind me and we're going to be okay. Is it scary? Yeah, it's scary. Absolutely, it's scary. But that's why it's good. the roller coaster that doesn't go up and down is not called a roller coaster. It's called the morning commute, right? Like that sucks. Nobody wants it.
Right.
But the fun part is the scary part, and you just got to get comfortable with that.
Well, Clint, like, and you're talking about getting comfortable, you're talking about jumping out first, but Clint, I'm an introvert. Like, I don't know if I like people. I don't know if I want to be first, I don't want to be wrong. There's a whole lot of reasons why I may not want to be first. And I'm not always confident in my decision making or whatever it might be, even though people might look at me, but I'm not always confident in it, but ultimately it's because my introvertedness, I don't know if I made up a word or not, but introvertedness keeps popping out, so how do I overcome something like that if people are looking at me, but I'm not confident in it, especially because I am an introvert?
So first, I think people really overstate other people's confidence in decisions. Good leaders, anyway. I think there are a lot of people who are really confident in their decisions, and they're just wrong a lot. And look, I'll be the first one to own that I had that part of my life. I said very, very conclusively that I thought Peyton Manning was going to be a bust, and I thought Ryan Leaf was going to be a better quarterback. I would be the first person to own that. It didn't work out. I got that one wrong. Okay, fair enough. But the point I think there's a level of certainty that people who are introverts are naturally wired to question that certainty. They're naturally wired to say, well, let's try to gather some more information. And so I think that actually naturally introverted people can be exceptional leaders because what they do so effectively is they bring other people to the table. And they bring the idea that the decision isn't mine, it's ours. And my job is to distill the information, not to tell you what I think. There's a great book, Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, which I really encourage everybody to read, about probabilistic decision making, and the idea that if we incorporate additional information and update our priors as we go, we become much more accurate in our decisions. And so I think that what introverts can be really effective at, and look, I'm married to someone who is a natural introvert, so I see this every day, and she excels in her career in a way that I think if you went back and asked her 10 years ago, will this be you? I think she'd be stunned by it. But it's because she's so good at saying, what do you think? What do you think? Let's get everybody to the table, and be okay stepping out in front. So I think everybody has a level of nervousness about that. I think the other piece that I would add to that, if you're introverted and you're nervous about it and you think people are looking at you and you think people are, judging you on the stage, they're not. No one's the main character in somebody else's movie. It's not how it works, right? Like we all have this idea that people are looking at us, and you spill something on yourself walking on an airplane, and you're like, did everybody see me? No, they didn't. They didn't, because they're sitting there looking at their phone, or they're looking out the window, or they're freaking out because it's raining and they're worried about the takeoff. Nobody's paying attention to you. They're not. They're not paying attention. They're spotting you the mistakes, and people are more gracious than we give them credit for. Our fears are so much louder than our confidence, and it's just a matter of turning one knob down and turning the other one up.
And I hear you on that. So, Clint, I mean, we're going to go back for a second for something that you had mentioned. And when we're talking about introverts looking at all the information. So I just wonder, how much information did you really take in looking at Ryan Leaf versus Peyton Manning?
Oh my God. Are you seriously you're gonna kill me for this decision in '98? I love it, man. No, actually, I think that's a perfect example of where bad decisions can come from. So Colin Powell said that every good decision comes between 40 and 70%, or 40 and 80%. I can't remember what the numbers are. But having that level of information. And the idea is, if you wait too long and get everything, then decisions past you. And if you make it too early, you're missing out on key things. When I said that Ryan Leaf was going to be better than Peyton Manning, I overvalued arm strength. Because Peyton Manning did not have the arm that Ryan Leaf had. Right. And I love the fact that we're now going down like the NFL scouting, path for this interview. But Leaf had a cannon, and if you watch Leaf in college at Wazoo, like he had a cannon, and so the ability to make those throws at the NFL level, he's got it, right? He had it. The thing that I didn't have in my decision-making calculus was that he was a head case. Right? I didn't have that in there. And so, if you think about the idea that bringing the right information into the analysis, bringing the right information into that decision-making process matters. I think if you and I sat down with both of those two guys and had an opportunity to have a conversation with them in 1998, not today with the self-reflection that they got. Right. In 1998, I think that there's a strong chance we walk out of that room looking at each other going, this one, he's got some stuff, like he's got some screws loose, like there's some issues there. And if you over-index then to the idea that being an NFL quarterback is heavily cerebral, then it becomes a very easy decision to say, well, the arm strength is great, but who cares? Right. But the extrovert is inclined to take the first thing that's there and jump out at it. The introvert is inclined to say, let me ask one more question. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Right.
Hey, psychologist in the corner of the room who's been evaluating these guys, what do you think?
Right.
That's the power that a natural introvert can bring in a leadership role. And it's really transformational. Those people are incredible.
And going back to if we were to sit back in the room with them, so at that particular time in 98, I would have been 22 years old.
Okay.
So I would not have been analyzing, but so much, right? Not but so much. But I'm gonna tell you from my days of playing Madden, I would prefer, the slants and things like that versus trying to throw it deep, because of even if I get the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, if I get the 5 yard, slant, 7 yard slant, whatever, the corner, whatever it might have been, something that's more percentage wise is higher. I would prefer that than to take the total leap, because because we don't know really from an NFL perspective, you're throwing it deep, you're missing it, you're overthrowing it, you can't judge the lines, weather, auto, so yeah, the arm sounds great, but I would prefer, let's look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady didn't have a greatest arm either.
Agreed.
You get what I mean?
And that speaks to my point of, go positive, go first, don't quit. Right? Because ultimately what a guy like Tom Brady, what a guy like Peyton Manning can do is it is consistent, right?
Right.
Over and over. It's those 7 yard gains, 7 yard gains, 7 yard gains, 7 yard gain. And that's how you win, right? I shared I spoke at a conference a couple months ago, and I threw up a picture of like Arches National Park. And I said, how'd this get created? And the answer is erosion. Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens with little bits over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
And that's the part about don't quit. That's the part about continue to have those positive yardage, to bring it back to our football point.
Right.
The team that gains 4 yards every time the ball gets snapped, they will always win the game.
Right.
Because they'll never have to punt. Right. It is just consistent. And so, 18-year-old me, to go back to then, didn't get it. Because when I was playing Madden, I love to snap the ball and chuck it deep, right? That's the fun stuff. And you have to learn and kind of grow to get to that point where you say, sometimes it takes a little longer, and that's okay. But you just keep walking forward.
Right. So I think that's one of the things that I really hear what you're saying as far as a leader. Understanding what our limitations are to some degree, you know, and staying within that, because if you really think about it, even if it is 4 yards, well, guess what? Every third down, we're getting another first down.
That's right.
And even though it is an additional 2 yards past that 10, now you're looking like, hey, it's not just at the 10, it's a little bit more. It's just a little bit more, where we're stretching it a little bit more. And it's taking time from everyone else, and we're building confidence in ourselves, in our team. So I think there's a lot of things that we could take from this football analogy of not only are we building confidence for ourselves because where our percentage is higher, but we're building those, whatever it is, swing passes, whatever it might be, are now, because now we're able to pivot, we're able to read the defenses, because we didn't think Peyton could do that. Right. There were some challenges with that too, right?
Yeah. Your 28 picks his rookie year, right? He couldn't read it.
Right.
And yeah, completely with you. Look, I went from that mentality to I went to Wisconsin, where it's all about running the ball.
Right.
So like it was right. Such a good, from a football perspective, it was such a good sheep dipping into a different way of thinking. And yeah, it's I think if you just rely on that idea of just consistent positivity and consistent progress, you're gonna be fine.
Wow. So Clint, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. I thank you for allowing, even though it seemed like we went off the beaten path, right?
Sure.
But I just wanted the listeners to know, like, hey, we could take a lesson from any and everywhere, to be honest. Yes, it might, for those of you who might not understand football exactly, but know that there's a lot of leadership that's going on in that, period, across the board. So I thank you, Clint, for using that and throwing that out there, and I was able to utilize this in the show. Right?
The best lessons come from the least likely places, right? And I think that's something that you got to always have your eyes and ears open to be able to bring that information in.
Now, Clint, answer this last question for me. How can people find out where they can talk to you? Get other leadership ideas or, understand where they're going or whatever it might be. Where can they reach out and find out?
So best two paths are clintrusch.com. It's CLINTRUSCH.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn with just Clint Rusch. So,
just simple as that.
Yeah.
Just simple as that.
Yeah.
But and of course that information will be in the show notes, so you don't have to go very far if you're listening, in your car and things like that as usual. But Clint, before let you go, I gotta ask you the world famous question, man. Remember, no parameters, no parameters.
No parameters. Okay.
Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
I think I'd rather choose 3 doors. And I think the reason I'd rather choose 3 doors is that if I'm given the choice of 3 doors or a fork in the road, when I have a fork in the road, there's 2 potential paths. I can go left or I can go right. With 3 doors, I've got the opportunity to bring in a lot more information into my thinking. I don't know what's behind those doors. Maybe there's another path. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's something that changes my path. Maybe there's information that I want. But I love the idea of having a little bit more information to inform that decision.
Nice. Like I said, there's no parameters, man. Like I said, I had one person who said the doors were acrylic. They were glass. They could see through them.
Oh, I like that. Again, that's a good. There's some Kobayashi Maru there. I like that, man. That's some good stuff.
So that's why I stated no parameters, no right or wrong answers. Is how you perceive it, and other people can relate to that as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But Clint, thank you very much for coming on the show, and also thank you for your service, sir.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure, no problem. And I thank y'all very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast, and I will talk to y'all a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?